As soon as Terrence populates in, I'll put him in.
Terrence just texted me that he's going to be back on in 2 minutes, so we should go ahead and start. He'll be on in just a sec.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So nice to see everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. It's Thursday, May 20th. It's my pleasure to call our meeting to order. If I could ask someone to make a motion to return to public session, please. Thank you, Catherine, and seconded by Liz. Thank you so much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Terrific, 6-0. And if everybody would please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terrific. Thank you so much. It's great to see everybody. Good evening. Tonight we're looking forward to our annual public hearing for the Code of Conduct and the District Safety Plan. And we're going to welcome Ms. Lisa Herlihy. She's going to join us in just a short while. And we're also looking forward to an opportunity to vote a little bit later in the meeting on a resolution to accept the results of our annual budget vote conducted this past Tuesday. We begin tonight with board announcements. And on behalf of the board, I just wanted to begin by taking a moment to thank our community, to express our gratitude to our community for supporting our proposed school budget and for supporting a bus proposition that will ensure safe transportation for all Katona-Lewisboro students to and from school. We appreciate your partnership, your patience, feedback, and trust during this very challenging year. And as every student adapted to new protocols, practices, and changes to their learning environments, our students have been amazing and inspirational throughout the year. We thank you for entrusting Katona-Lewisboro with their education, and we are already looking forward to welcoming them back in September. I also just wanted to say welcome and congratulations to Ilana Schneier, who will be joining the board in July. And thank you to Terrence for your dedicated service when he joins us in a moment. And we're going to have an opportunity at our next meeting to express our gratitude more formally. And thank you to the community for entrusting me to serve another term. Thank you also to our community for its continued support of our schools and our students on behalf of the board. And I'll pause here. I'm not sure whether other board members had some announcements or additional comments or thoughts.
I know this was actually a Westchester County Department of Health initiative, but I just wanted to say thank you to our administration for whatever coordination was needed for the Fox Lane, Bedford and Katona-Lewisboro school vaccination site. I actually took my younger son to it earlier today, and it was just really awesome to see all these young kids getting their vaccinations, and it was really well run. And I just think it was a really nice opportunity for both communities to be able to get a sort of local, easy vaccination. So whatever part our team played in that, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Any other announcements or comments? Okay, if not, Andrew, we would love to hear from you tonight if you have some announcements for us.
I do. Thanks, Marjorie. And some of them will echo things that you have just said, because I certainly also want to give great thanks and appreciation to the community for your support. I want to thank the poll workers who really supported our efforts throughout the day on Tuesday. It's a long day, and we really appreciate the hard work that they all did. I want to thank Kim, who's here on the screen with us. Kim does an enormous amount of work to have us be ready for that day and to have it go smoothly. So thank you to her. Thank you to everybody in the community, and of course to all of the administrators and teachers who put so much work into developing the budget and having it be ready for next year. We really appreciate that. And around our region and around the state, it was really, all in all, a great show of support for public education with a very, very high passing rate of budgets, which is nice to see. It has, as we all know, been such a challenging year, and it's nice to think that people still recognize the value and the importance of public education. And I think, if anything, um, we've learned a lot about the importance of listening to people, thinking carefully about how we do things, not assuming that we always do things in the same way. We've certainly had to make a lot of adjustments in the past year, and a lot of those lessons will serve us well as we move forward. So again, just lots of appreciation all around. And actually, in that same vein, and following up on the comments that Julia was just making about the vaccinations at Fox Lane, I want to thank Joel Adelberg, who's the superintendent over in Bedford, who reached out when that opportunity arose. And we were very happy to partner with them. They did in fact, do a bulk of the work since it was happening on their campus. But it's nice to see there's been a lot more partnering of this kind of thing happening in the last year out of necessity. And now that's creating some nice opportunities, which is really great to see. From there, I wanted to just actually, I know we always call out upcoming board meetings at the end of these meetings, but I just wanted to pay particular mind this time. There's only 2 board meetings left in the school year after tonight. And at our next meeting, we'll be celebrating our retirees as well as staff who are being recommended for tenure. And that's always a really nice celebratory night and an important night. And then at the very last board meeting this year, June 17th, we'll have 2 significant presentations, one from our Equity and Racial Justice Committee and another from our Sustainability Committee. Lots of overlap in a way in the work of those 2 groups. Lots of work to think about together in terms of justice and all the hard work and important work to come in both of those areas, and enormous relevance for our students and for the kind of learning that we want to see them doing in the years ahead, and in the challenges, I'd like to say, in the opportunities that they will have as future citizens to tackle really significant and complicated issues in their world. So I hope lots of people will tune in for those presentations. I think they'll both be meaningful and hopefully not just a summary of all the work that these groups have been doing, but also a chance for people to learn something about the topics themselves. Just a little earlier today, our elementary principals and our middle school principal put out some further information about end of year ceremonies, moving up ceremonies. And I want to both express appreciation for their work as they try to still navigate guidelines. I think some people are perhaps thinking that as things seem to be easing up around us, that many of the guidelines have gone away. In fact, most guidelines have remained the same for schools, even as the world around us has eased up a little bit more. But in light of feedback from parents, they are working hard to try to plan events that can balance the health and safety needs, which of course we have to meet, and also wanting to celebrate students as much as we possibly can. We're not back to normal, what we think of as normal just yet. We all wish that we were, but we're not quite there yet. So there are complications, and our staff have worked very hard to try to work through those and still provide meaningful events for our students. And speaking of that, my last point is also actually just a point of clarification, because we've been getting some questions on that with the CDC issuing some new guidance around mask wearing and both indoors and outdoors in the last few days. This seems to be a common trend where the CDC puts out guidance and then people start to wonder, does that have impact on schools? And particularly this week with Governor Cuomo suggesting that on Wednesday the 19th, there would be this grand reopening across New York State. It's maybe important to just call out again that even Governor Cuomo in this case said the changes in mask guidance do not apply to schools, and that mask wearing will continue through the remainder of this year, at least, as far as we know, in the same way. So our students, our faculty in the school buildings every day will still be wearing their masks all the time as we just continue to try to finish out the year with hopefully just as much safety as we've had all throughout the year. I'm knocking on wood as I say this, but the outcomes have been good the last couple of weeks. The numbers have really dropped. You haven't seen those nightly COVID updates from me because there have not been cases to report. So I hope I haven't just jinxed us in saying that, but we want to see that continue as we finish out the year as well as possible. So, and that I think is the end of my update for tonight. Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you, Andrew. We really appreciate that.
Sure.
Maybe we should just pause for a moment. That was a comprehensive update. I don't know whether any board members have clarifying questions or thoughts before we move on. Everybody ready?
Can
Catherine, please.
you just also, Andrew, clarify? I think there's been discussion, there are other schools within New York State, perhaps outside during sporting events, who are not requiring the use of masks. Can you just clarify, the New York State Department of Health is still requiring masks on campus at any points outside?
I think the more precise way to say it would be that New York State has not made any changes in its guidelines to schools. So whatever rules schools put in place previously, there's been no impetus to change those rules. I think one thing people might be seeing is that as the temperature increases outside, one of the rules that has been in place all along for athletes in particular is that they should wear masks to the extent they can be tolerated. And there may be some slight change now with the heat outside, that there may need to be more breaks in order to take those breaks and take those masks off periodically while engaged in athletic competition, now that it's upwards of 80 degrees on some days. But otherwise, by and large, that's correct. You know, the expectation is still at school, the masks are on.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. If there aren't any further comments at this time, then we can move on. And we are looking forward to an update on the Code of Conduct for 2021-2022. Thank you. Should I turn it over to you, Danelle?
Sure. Lisa Herlihy is going to present tonight on the Code of Conduct and also the district safety team. Lisa is our school business administrator. So with that, I will turn this over to you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Good evening.
And I will just share my screen here. Can y'all see that?
Not yet, no.
No?
No. I can pull it up on mine if that helps you out.
Okay. Do you want to pull up on yours? Do you? Yeah. Sorry for the technical difficulties. You see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. And I see that's the wrong one that's up though. Sorry about that. One more try. There we go. So I'm here tonight to present on the Code of Conduct, and you got the sneak peek of also the district safety plan PowerPoint. So, so thank you for having me. And just to start off, each year, the district is required to conduct this public hearing of the Code of Conduct. The Board of Education will be asked to approve the Code of Conduct for the 2021-2022 school year at the annual reorganization meeting held in July. By presenting this tonight, this leaves ample time for the required public comment period. I'd like to take this time to thank all those who participated on this committee for their hard work, their thoughtfulness, and their input. Specifically from the board, we had Catherine Ostrichter and Liz Garrity, Mary Ford and Kim Piccolino. This process included initial review by the committee, review by our attorney, a second review by the committee, and then a final review from our attorneys, Ingram and Smith. The committee incorporated, there were a few changes. We incorporated the terms welcoming and affirming to many parts of the documents. We also discussed if the language in the Code of Conduct adequately addressed technology. We replaced the term acceptable with the term responsible to be consistent with the title of our responsible use plan. And lastly, we deleted a couple of items we felt that were redundant or already addressed in the document. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to clarify any questions the board may have or open up to discussion about the code conduct.
Thank you. We really appreciate the overview, and thank you to the committee for the thoughtful discussion and suggested changes. Not sure whether any board members had questions, comments. Terrific. Thank you for doing the heavy lifting so that we could review it seamlessly.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question, actually? If
Please.
knowing that, and you don't need to put the slides back up, but just knowing that now there's this comment period, if board members at some future point are reviewing the document before July 1 or before the meeting in July, what's the avenue for them to let us know if there are changes?
They can email me, that's fine, and I can, you know, and then we can incorporate any of those changes into the code of conduct.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Actually,
Please, Bill, go ahead.
I actually had a question. You mentioned about updating it a little bit to keep in keeping with technology. I went through it a few times. I didn't see any significant changes in that regard. So is it felt that the document does reflect?
Exactly. We felt that we just wanted to make sure, like, for example, when it spoke of the student press, since there's more, you know, electronic means of communication, we did check with the attorney if we needed to incorporate anything to address that. And he said that it was okay. We addressed it adequately. And the language that we used was broad enough to also address any electronic and electronic means of press, for example.
And then there was just the one word change from acceptable use policy to responsible use policy to be consistent with our responsible use technology policy.
Yeah.
Okay, should we move on to the safety plan?
So now I'll move on to this annual, to our presentation on the annual district-wide safety plan. Again, this is a mandatory public hearing as required by Project SAVE. Project SAVE, as a reminder, was enacted in the year of 2000 as a result of the tragic events that occurred at Columbine High School in 1999. This led to legislation that requires the development of proactive measures that address serious crisis situations related to natural disasters, school violence, or even a death of a school member. Project SAVE recognizes excuse me, that learning cannot take place in an unsafe environment. Parents want to be assured that their children are in a safe place. SAVE Act requires school districts to define how school district will respond to acts of violence and other disasters through prevention, intervention, and emergency response management. Katona-Lewisboro Policy 8130 addresses school safety teams as well as our requirement for plans. We held an annual review of the plan before tonight's meeting. I'd like again to take the opportunity to thank the members of the community who contributed to the annual safety plan review, including teachers, school administrators, members of our district crisis team, building level administrators, building level crisis team members, our school resource officer, as well as representatives from the Vista Fire Department, Katona Fire Department, Golden Bridge Fire Department, Town of Bedford Police Department, as well as Putnam North and Westchester BOCES. We also reviewed this plan with our district emergency response team prior to this meeting. So emergencies in schools are defined as undesirable events that occur and have the potential to cause injury or illness to members of our school community or disrupt the orderly educational process. Knowing and practicing what to do can make a huge difference in the case of an emergency. The cost of doing nothing equals placing students and staff at risk. Complicates recovery, may interrupt instructional time, may increase liability, may increase costs for repairs, potentially negatively impacting the school district's reputation and erode public support. Our district-wide safety plan not only meets the mandate, but it provides useful information to help minimize the effect of emergencies, and it's designed to protect against harm and mitigate damages. The district-wide school safety plan is filed with SED and our local police departments once the board has adopted at the annual reorganization meeting in July. Some other mandates that I want to take the opportunity to highlight that are required under Project SAVE is every employee is trained at the beginning of the school year with the mandated mental health component, which in these times we know is very important. District and building level safety teams meet on a regular basis. We fully are compliant with the requirements under SED for our drills. Again, even this year, there weren't any changes to the number that were required, but we had to make some considerations when it came to social distancing, but we still continue to conduct all of those 12 fire drills as required under SAVE. The really only major update that we made was discussed earlier in February when I was with you all. And that was that due to the amendments to Education Law 2801A regarding pandemic planning, districts were required to adopt a continuation of operations in the event that a governor declares a public health emergency involving communicable disease. This plan has been included as an addendum to the district-wide safety plan and is required to include protocols for responding to declared public health emergencies. And then we also just made some small updates since we have 2 new administrators joining us in June and July. So just in summary, schools must remain a safe place, and Katona-Lewisboro is committed to providing a safe learning environment by having such tools as the safety plan. The safety plan sets the framework for emergency management. And again, I'd just like to take this opportunity to clarify any questions the board may have, and open it up for discussion.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank
Any
you.
comments or questions?
I have a quick question, Lisa, and thanks so much for your time on both the code of conduct and the safety plan. I didn't have time to review either of them thoroughly, but I did sort of review them and took a look at all the redlining. And I was a little bit surprised to see, and maybe you touched on it in your penultimate slide, that in Appendix 5, the protocols for responding to public health emergency, that we haven't made any updates. And I'm presuming that this was documented last year. And I would have thought that in the year that just passed, that we would have had some experiences that would cause us to maybe review some of the items on there. But it may be that this is just referring to the other plan that you mentioned on the second to last slide. But I guess my question is, did we review that section thoroughly, and are we confident that all of the learnings from the past year have been incorporated into Appendix 5?
Well, as you mentioned, so that actually was just developed and added in the winter of 2020, 2021. We did review it, and we do feel that it is still as up to date as we can as far as everything that we've learned in the past year.
Okay, that's helpful. I kind of struggled a bit to decipher the date that was on there that looked like it had been redlined out. So that's very helpful,
Oh.
Lisa. Thank you. Thanks. So it is fresh, basically, is my question.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you.
Thanks for clarifying, Lisa. Any
You're
other
welcome.
questions? Thoughts? Okay, well, we really appreciate your time and the presentation or overview of both the Code of Conduct and the Safety Plan. And if I understand correctly and recall correctly, we will revisit these at our reorganization meeting where we'll have the opportunity to vote on a resolution to adopt them.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, terrific. Is there anything else that you need from us this evening?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us. Great to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
Take care. Great, thank you so much. I think this brings us to public forum, and I apologize for community members who are with us this evening who might be waiting to share thoughts and comments. Please feel free to use the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we'll allow for a couple of moments for you to do so. And we ask that you please identify yourself with your name and let us know where you live in the district, where your children attend school. We're not able to read any anonymous comments into the public record, so we do request that you please let us know who you are. And this is our opportunity to listen to members of the community, so we won't interrupt or engage in back and forth, but please rest assured that in a short while we have some opportunity for board dialogue and discussion where we certainly can seek clarification or respond to any matters that are brought up here during public forum. And with that, in just a moment, I'm going to ask Kim to help us out by letting us know whether emails have come into the public forum email account or to assist with the chats in the Q&A. Thank you very much, Kim, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Marjorie. I did receive a few emails into the public forum email address this afternoon, so I will begin with those. The first email is from Angela Garofalo. Dear Catawba Borough Board, thank you and your policy committee for the revisions made to policy number 43-2112. It is definitely an improvement from the 2011 document, but we feel there is still room for improvement. Commissioner's regulations are referenced throughout this document. Can you please add a section letting Layton know where we can find these specific regulations? Under the protective holds, emergency intervention sections, page 2, second paragraph. Holds should not be in place to protect property. They should only be used to protect individuals. On the final page of the document, the following statement needs to be changed. Currently, it reads, the student's parents, guardians shall be notified of each incident of emergency intervention in a timely manner. Rather than a timely manner, it should read the day of the incident. Under staff training on the last page, can you please reference in this document what training staff receives? This still seems unclear to me. Thank you. Next email is from Rebecca Pernick. Hello. I'd like to raise the following comment questions for the board's consideration and review at tonight's meeting. I have reviewed policy 43-2112, and I am pleased that some changes have been made. However, I am requesting a further refinement to one phrase. On page 3 of the policy, it states, the student's parents, guardians shall be notified of each incident of emergency intervention in a timely manner. The use of the term timely manner could be left to interpretation, which leads to ambiguity on when a parent guardian should be notified. An acceptable change would be the student's parents, guardians shall be notified of each incident of emergency intervention as soon as possible and within 24 hours. In my view, this is a simple change, which I am sure already reconciles with the board's view of in a timely manner. Thank you. The next email is from James Crimmins. I find the current policy 43-2112 around child restraints and parental notification woefully inadequate. In light of the recent horrible failures within the school to notify parents in an actual timely manner, the language around this policy must require real accountability. The current language must be changed. Parents must be notified immediately, same day, within 24 hours. The policy language must reflect a real accounting, not a meaningless, unenforceable word salad. Trust is restored through accountability. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The next email is from Jane Crimmins. I have had a chance to review the above mentioned policy 43-2112, and I am pleased to hear that people are happy with some substantive changes. One phrase remains inadequate. It can be located on page 3 of the document. It is the last line before staff training. It reads, "The students, parents, guardians shall be notified of each incident of emergency intervention in a timely manner." The acceptable change would be, "shall be notified of each incident of emergency interventions as soon as possible and within 24 hours. This is a medical necessity. Parents and guardians have a right to monitor their child's vitals after a restraint or emergency protective hold in order to prevent risk of serious injury or death. These have most certainly occurred due to the practice of physical control over the body of an involuntary individual for both the individuals implementing the restraint and the unwilling recipient. In the current scenario, the implementer has access to their rights of medical monitoring, but the unwilling and underage recipient does not. We may not be able to reduce the number of times these emergency intervention measures are utilized and considered necessary, but we can certainly be proactive in centering the medical safety of our students. I look forward to your re-review of this policy and response in a timely manner." The next email is from Andrea Florian. "I am writing as a concerned parent of a child in the classroom where restraints were used. While the policy has been updated, I still have great concerns about the recently updated policy. There is no verbiage on direction to be taken before a restraint is needed and no mention of repeated holds. Department of Education Restraint and Seclusion Resource Document states, these principles stress that every effort should be made to prevent the need for the use of restraint and seclusion, and that any behavioral intervention must be consistent with the child's rights to be treated with dignity and to be free from abuse. The principles make clear that restraint or seclusion should never be used except in situations where a child's behavior possesses imminent danger of serious physical harm to self or others, and restraints and seclusion should be avoided to the greatest extent possible without endangering the safety of students and staff." Principle 8, the use of restraints or seclusion, particularly when there is repeated use for an individual child, multiple uses within the same classroom, or multiple uses by the same individual, should trigger a review and, if appropriate, revision of strategies currently in place to address dangerous behavior. If positive behavioral strategies are not in place, staff should consider developing them. 2, refined verbiage pertaining to protective holds regarding protection of school property if a student fails to comply with requests. Federal guidance states where the child's behavior possesses imminent danger of serious physical harm to self or others. Does not mention the use of protective holds to protect school property. 3, there are 2 pages devoted towards a timeout room or space to be used before a restraint, yet one is not currently available. 4, I would also like a clear line of communication responsibility. Next email is from Teresa Henderson. The current policy for use of emergency protective hold and timeout does not include a hard deadline for informing parents and guardians of the occurrence of such interventions. This is unacceptable. Such interventions have been known to be extreme and have put the child at risk for health complications. Regardless of whether these types of interventions are happening with our school district is relevant. Anytime a child is disciplined or in need of protective holds, parents and guardians need to be informed, if not immediately, then within a short period of time in order to monitor the physical and emotional health of the child. It is our right as parents to be told of any disciplinary measure or emergency intervention and the incident leading to it. Scholastic staff members are given absolute trust every time a child is on school grounds, and withholding information regarding their behavior and the results of their behavior erodes that trust. While the staff is responsible for a child during the school day, parents and guardians are ultimately responsible for their child's well-being. A child engaging in behavior that warrants protective holds needs help. Parents and guardians need to be informed of the behavior and consequences in order to provide the child with whatever help is needed to avoid future incidents. When it comes to a child's well-being, vague terms are not sufficient. The current language of policy 432112 reads, "The student's parents, guardians shall be notified of each incident of emergency intervention in a timely manner." What constitutes a timely manner is too subjective. An acceptable change would be shall be notified of each incident of emergency intervention as soon as possible and within 24 hours. I would want to be pulled from a meeting with the most senior VIP in the land if my child needed a protective hold. Please consider setting a hard deadline for communication. The next email is from Alexandra Ferreira. I appreciate your recent changes to the policy regarding the use of physical restraints in our schools. Despite these changes, however, the policy remains unsatisfactory in several respects. First, the statement, "The student's parents, guardians shall be notified of each incident of emergency intervention in a timely manner," should be amended to, "shall be notified of each use of emergency intervention as soon as it is safe to do so." Next, please note that the federal guidance does not specify a danger to school property or to the orderly functioning of school as conditions justifying the use of restraint. Please note as well the specific language of the guidance and that it prescribes a standard higher than the minimum standard set by the law. It states, "Physical restraint or seclusion should not be used except in situations where the child's behavior poses imminent danger of serious physical harm to self or others." Please also note that the Keeping All Students Safe Act, now being considered in Congress, also excludes danger to school property or to the orderly functioning of the school as conditions justifying the use of physical restraint on a student. It is appropriate that our policy meets this higher standard. Finally, federal guidance states the following: "The use of restraint or seclusion, particularly when there is repeated use for an individual child, multiple uses within the same classroom, or multiple uses by the same individual, should trigger a review and, if appropriate, revision of strategies currently in place to address dangerous behavior. It is appropriate that the board policy on restraint include this stipulation." Another email from Oksana Aronov. "The newly adopted policy references to parent notification in a timely manner is too nebulous and lacks urgency. The policy must require that parents be notified immediately and definitely by the end of the day. Furthermore, federal guidance states that holds should not be in place to protect property or facilitate the functioning of a school. They should only be used to protect individuals. The only way to ensure that they are rare, our policy should reflect this." That is all of the emails that has been submitted for public forum. Now I'll check the Q&A, and there are a couple. Okay, this is from Alexa Ferreira. Good evening. When can the public review the proposed language for the revisions to the Code of Conduct? Matthew Goglia, please consider adopting the 15 principles as set forth by the U.S. Department of Education when re-evaluating policy 432112. And there's a link to restraints and seclusion resources included in the Q&A. And at this time, that is all the comments that I see.
Thank you very much, Kim, for your help. And thank you so much to members of our community for sending feedback in advance and also for joining us tonight to share comments and suggestions in the Q&A. We really appreciate that. And as I mentioned, in a few moments, we'll have a chance to gather our thoughts and perhaps have a conversation. I think at this time, as long as there are no further comments for the public forum, I'm going to suggest that we close the public forum and move to the next agenda item, which is our consent agenda. I'm not aware of any items that need to be voted on separately. We are, of course, about to vote on the results of our budget vote. And so again, thank you so much to members of our community for supporting our schools and students. I'll move the consent agenda in its entirety. If someone would please second. Thank you, Rory. I think I see your hand. And I'm just going to pause and check in. Andrew, did you have any comments or thoughts you wanted to share on any other items?
On the consent agenda. Thanks, Marjorie.
Okay, thank you. If there aren't any further questions or comments, then I think we can vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you so much. It's 7-0. And I think this brings us to board dialogue and discussion. I would like to just start by reiterating our thanks and appreciation to community members for reviewing our policy, for providing feedback. It's great that we have community members who are reviewing and sharing concerns and thoughts. We really appreciate that. I do want to thank the policy committee for suggesting that we adopt a revised policy. It sounds as if many of the revisions were appreciated and are supported by community members, if I'm hearing the feedback correctly, but that there are at least two issues where community members still have concerns. I know that our policy committee worked closely with regulations. I think it's an interesting suggestion to perhaps cross-reference the regulations, and I'm sure, Andrew, you can speak to the regulations in a moment. So I'm going to just, invite you to say a few words on how you're hearing the feedback and perhaps
Sure.
what our next steps might be. Thank you.
Thanks, Marjorie. I begin by echoing your appreciation for all that feedback. Clearly, people are looking closely and thinking hard about these things, which we do appreciate. Maybe just to give a little context for people who might not be as attuned to the last few weeks in the life of this policy. It was just, I believe, just adopted at our last meeting as a revision from an older version of the policy. So the policy committee had been reviewing a substantial number of our special education related policies. This one was part of that review. When we're reviewing these policies, as Marjorie just noted, we look very closely at the relevant regulations. In this case, we look at New York State regulations. The New York State regulations are actually silent on the matter of the time frame in which families are to be notified about the use of holds. The policy committee made note of that and decided to go beyond that and include the phrase that you heard so many times tonight, the phrase "in a timely manner." Clearly, that's evoked a lot of concern among families. That was certainly not the intent of the policy committee. We thought we were actually going further than regulation required. But we're happy to take the comments back and revisit with policy at a future committee meeting, at an upcoming committee meeting, so that we can revisit and think about some of the other suggestions that were made tonight. We review all of our policies regularly, and it seems most pertinent to go back and look at this one again in light of the feedback.
Thank you, Andrew. That sounds like a great next step, and it's helpful that we have these suggestions in the public record. We heard a lot of interesting suggestions, good suggestions for other ways to think about introducing language around the timeliness of notification. So, and other issues too that were brought to our attention. Are there any other comments or suggestions or thoughts or other topics? And I didn't mean to cut you short, Andrew, if you were going to say something else.
Just a couple other things.
Yeah.
I think I heard a question in there about where can we review the regulations themselves, and the State Ed Department website is a very good resource. These are the Part 200 regulations. They're relatively easy through a search, whether you go to the State Ed Department or you Google just the New York State Part 200 regulations to find them all. They're all publicly available. We don't typically incorporate all of those regulations into our policies because even as some of the comments tonight pointed out, we might want to go further than those regulations. So we make sure that we're in compliance for sure. But we don't just reword the regulations. So they're or cut and paste them into our own policy. So they're available publicly. There was also a question that we can, I think, pretty easily address tonight about the where the code of conduct can be viewed. I believe it's attached to tonight's agenda. Kim, you'll correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think it's available on the public site in board docs for anybody to look at if people want to review the code of conduct on this agenda, on tonight's agenda.
And for anybody who's not familiar with board docs or just, would like a little bit of a pointer, we're happy to point you in the right direction. Feel free to email the Board of Education, or you can email our district clerk, Kim Monson, who's with us tonight, and any of us will be happy to point you in the right direction if you're not familiar with board docs. It's the platform that we use for our board agendas and for all of the corresponding attachments, materials, and presentations. And it's a good library of all of the school business that's being transacted at each of these meetings.
Marjorie, importantly, it's on the district website. It's on klschools.org under Board of Ed. There's a link there to board docs and anybody can go check it out.
Thank you. And enter the public site. Any other thoughts or comments at this time? Okay, if not, thank you again to our community members for joining us and for providing feedback, and thank you for your suggestion, Andrew. I think this brings us to looking ahead to future meetings. And as was mentioned earlier, there are just 2 Board of Education meetings left in this school year. We will next meet on Thursday, June 3rd at 7:30 p.m. And we hope that members of the community will join us. It's our opportunity to honor retiring school staff and members of the administration, and also individuals who are being recognized for tenure in the school district, and also to acknowledge departing board members and honor them for their service. And then the board will meet again on Thursday, June 17th. That's our last meeting of the year, where we're really looking forward to 2 presentations, both from the Equity and Racial Justice Subcommittee and from the Sustainability Subcommittee. And those really should be very comprehensive and illuminating of some of the work and opportunities that lie ahead for our entire school district. In between now and those 2 meetings, it looks like the Policy Committee is meeting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And Sustainability is meeting Friday, June 4th at 8:15 a.m. Policy meets again Friday, June 11th at 9 a.m. Finance Committee, Tuesday, June 15th at 7 p.m. Did I miss anything? Okay, if not, then I'm going to make a motion that the board adjourn back into executive session for a board development conversation. If I could please have a second. Seconded by Julia. Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Great, 7-0. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening, and looking forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you. Good night.